Hey guys, Midnight Range TM here. So, I've been trying to get a video made for a week or so for a buddy, Sean Ponnery. You might know him from out there in the video land. He said his dad makes cream dried beef, or eats cream dried beef. And he saw me post a Instagram post of cream dried beef that I made at home. It's actually the first thing I ever learned to make in a restaurant. After I went to culinary school for a year in between my first and second years, I worked at a bar, and the first recipe they handed me was cream dried beef. Really, really simple, and I think it'll always be one of my favorite things. So we're obviously not at the restaurant today, as you can see down there. We've got a little critter running around. So instead of hearing plates and dishwashers and servers, you may hear kids and puppies in the background. So this is a really easy one. We're starting off with three tablespoons of butter. It can be whole butter. It can be unsalted. It could be salted or unsalted. You're going to season this to taste at the end anyway, so don't worry about that so much. You could even use margarine. You could use whatever, any kind of fat you wanted, I'm sure. So we're just going to melt that in the pan, and we're not going to brown it really. We're going to take it to the point where it's nice and melted, and we're going to add some flour. Now, I don't have a recipe for the amount of flour. I don't use a recipe for any of this. I just measured how much butter I put in there, and we're going to call it three tablespoons. So we're going to add the flour to it, and then basically we're making a roux. If you put a lot of flour in it and it gets really dry, you tend to have a hard time getting the lumps out. So leaving it a little bit soft is going to make it a little bit easier for you to make. It's just a whole flour, all-purpose regular flour, white flour. We're going to be using 2 packs of dried beef. This is what I use. I buy it at the grocery store. SK. They have 2 different kinds there. They have a regular and a lower sodium. I always get the lower sodium ones. I figure I would rather add the salt to my taste than to have the salt already, in the beef. And these are 3-ounce packs. I'm going to be using 2 of them. And then we're going to be using a evaporated milk. And evaporated milk is just a whole milk that has slowly been evaporated. So it gets rid of some of the moisture, and it becomes a little bit more creamy and buttery. You can do this really inexpensively and buy like the store brand, or spend a little bit more and get, this is a Carnation. And the nicer, the more expensive ones tend to be a little bit more buttery. Honestly, they are a little bit better. But if you're going on the cheap, no big deal. Save yourself a couple bucks, I guess. What's awesome about this is, because you can use any fat, you really use whatever you got laying around is fine. The evaporated milk is in a can. It's got a long expiration date. The dried beef can be put in the freezer even if you want it to stay a little bit longer. And then it's flour, salt, and pepper. You could add a little garlic. You can add all sorts of stuff, fresh herbs to it if you want to. I don't. But again, this is something that you can have laying around the house, and ready to go. This is a big one that I like to do on Thanksgiving morning or something like that. If we have family over or friends over, everybody really digs it. So this is what you're looking for. Starting to get a little bit, it's all melted, starting to bubble a little bit. I'm not going to let it go too much longer. And then we'll start adding the flour. So we're getting a little tiny bit of color in here. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's getting a little tiny bit of like an amber color. Very, very light. We'll start off with 2 tablespoons and see if we need any more than that. We might need a third. Yeah, we'll probably add a little bit more. I'm going to go with another half tablespoon. So let's see what 2.5 tablespoons does. Usually it takes about a tablespoon of flour per tablespoon of butter. So I'll put a little tiny bit more in there. So that's 3 tablespoons of butter and 2 3/4 tablespoons of flour. You're going to hear a beep too. I do have some biscuits in the oven, so those are about to time out here. And you know what? I'm going to add another quarter. So we're going to do 3 tablespoons and 3 tablespoons. Easy to remember. Okay. Now, we're going to turn the heat way down, almost off. And we're going to add a half a can of our first can of evaporated milk. Take it off the heat. You don't want to cook it too much at this point because it'll get really, really thick. And check these biscuits while I'm pouring that in. Oh man, they're looking like biscuits and everything. Okay. Now this is going to be super thick, but I don't want to keep cooking it. Oops, I think I just bumped you there. I just want to slowly off the heat. Stir this in. Okay. And as we stir this in, put it back on the heat, stir in the other one, and we'll be good to go. Right. So we got that first can in. I'm going to turn the heat up just a tiny bit. And we're going to add the second can straight in there. So one of the things that you need to remember when you're doing anything with a roux is you need to cook that flour a little bit. It's nice to cook the flour at the beginning, like we did for a little bit. You know, put the butter in there, put the flour in there, and then cook it, swirl it around, stir it around a little bit. And also that way you don't need to cook it at the end as much. If you don't cook your flour, one, it's not going to thicken as much as it should, and you're also going to be left with a raw flour kind of taste. So this has the second can in there. It's looking a little loose, but as it comes up to a simmer, we should be good. So give this a minute. I'm going to get rid of the whisk and move to a rubber spatula. Just make sure if you're using a rubber spatula that it's one that's high temperature. It's not going to melt on you, get all messed up. And we're going to keep this moving a little bit and watch it thicken up. Alright, so come up to a simmer, starting to thicken up. We're going to give it a simmer for 30 seconds or so. We're going to put it on like a medium-ish heat, not super high. And you see it's nice and smooth, it's a real velvety. If you do have any, when you first add the flour and then the evaporated milk, you want to keep it off the heat and stir that in until you get all the flour mixed in. You don't want to have any balls of flour in there, because once you put that in there and bring it up to heat like this, if you have any flour that's in a ball, you're never going to get rid of it. We're going to hit this with some black pepper. I broke my pepper grinder, so we're going ground pepper. Got to buy a new one. And using some sea salt here. Okay. Just a little bit. Now, this I'm actually gonna turn it off. This is what the dried beef looks like before I chopped it up. It's really thin slice. It's drying, almost crumbly. You really could just crumble it up if you wanted to. And this is all 6 ounces of that. Now, what's really cool about this recipe is up until the point we added this, you could do whatever you wanted. You could use crumbled bacon, chopped bacon. You could use sausage. You could use burger. You could use like a chicken or a turkey sausage, or turkey bacon or something like that. Anything would work. Now this seems a little bit loose, and that's okay. If you give this about another 5 minutes to rest, it's going to thicken up a little bit more. And that beef is actually going to, because the beef is so dry, it's actually going to absorb some of the moisture, and it'll thicken up a little bit. So that's it. It's I know we're going to go for taste here for the seasoning. Oh, I stepped on a puppy. That's actually great. That's perfect. We did some biscuits with it. You can do it on toast. You can do it on whatever. Try it. I hope you enjoy it. It's super easy. I know the video is a little bit longer than it needs to be because I got to chitter chatter the whole time, but it's a really easy thing to do. Use the comment section if you have any questions. And if you've never made anything like this, make it. There's a lot of people that make a lot of jokes about SOS and cream dried beef, but it is awesome. And if you make it from scratch, you make it yourself, you make it really good, it'll change people's minds. I've had a lot of people that didn't want anything to do with it until they tried it, and now it's like one of their favorite things. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy, and don't forget, Sunday nights, 10:30 Eastern, The Closer, live on YouTube. Food, guns, politics, Second Amendment, and general nonsense. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, guys.